Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft a queen and neckline corset with a basque waistline. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let's dive right into today's video. So on this pattern, I have marked out my basic measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waist. From my waist to my basque length, I'm going to be using about 5 inches. Now you can also use 6 inches because the basque we're working on is a little deep. After that, I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, and this particular pattern has a sleeve. I'll be adding half to it, making it 7.5. So my shoulder divided by 2 plus half, and I'll go down by 1 inch. I will draw my shoulder slope or shoulder slant. So after that, I'm going to be marking out this neckline. So this neckline is just serving as a guide when I'm drawing out the queen and neckline for this particular pattern. So I'll go ahead to place my French curve and I'm going to draw it out. Next step I'm going to take is to go ahead and I will outline the neckline. So after I'm done outlining that, I'll move to finding my chest line. So the chest line, to get your chest line, is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So at this point, I'll be ruling out a straight line, which is my chest line, and whatever I have at my shoulder, I'll make a point at my chest line and I will rule a straight line. Now I'll divide my chest line into 2 by folding my tape, and I'll come out by ½ inch. At the chest line, I'll place and mark my bust circumference divided by 6, and I'm going to go ahead to place my French curve connect from my bust down, from the chest line down to the ½ inch and down to my shoulder, and I'll go ahead to outline this. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. Now I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler, connect it down this way. So what I have here is not so straight. I'll go ahead and I will reconnect it back. So after I'm done marking, the next thing is to mark my shoulder. I'm going to divide it by 2, but I'm going to draw out a fence line because I'm not really going to work on it, but it's going to also serve as a guide. After I'm done doing that, I'll be marking my dart intake of 1 inch. So now if you're on a plus size, you're going to be taking 1.5 at this point. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead and place my ruler and I'm going to connect all the way down, and I'll be repeating it on the other side also. I'll go ahead to draw a line at that point. Now I will introduce my French curve. Go ahead and connect this way, and I'll also go ahead to connect on the other side. So this is what I have, and I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline it so that it will be more visible for you to see. Now after that, I'll be going up by 1.5 inches from my chest line, and I'm going to go ahead to rule a fence line at that point because that will be serving as a guide when we are drawing out our cup. So after I'm done doing that, I'll label my chest line and I'll go ahead to mark my dart intake of 1 inch and 1 inch at the other point. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to place my French curve and connect at this point and also connect at the other point. So this is what I have right now. I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline this, and after I'm done outlining, the next step is to go in by ½ inch from my chest line. You can go down by half also, but I'm just going to leave it at this point. So I'm going to go ahead, place my French curve and connect down to my under bust. Now I'm going to place my French curve and connect. So while connecting at the upper part, please look at the cup styling you have so that your cup is going to match. So at this point, I'm just going to blend the upper part this way, and the next step is just to divide what I have between this and this, and I will mark. Now I will place my French curve and I will connect from that point down to my under bust this way and place my French curve, and I will draw out. While looking at the yoke, you notice that here is not too deep at the cup part, and after that I'll go ahead to label my cup. Now The next step I'm going to take is to insert my body circumference. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Measure these 2 inches that intake, and I'm going to replace and mark the sewing allowance. That is if you're sewing this dress. And remember that this pattern is just a drafting tutorial. So what I have on the chest line, I'll extend it to the bust. At the under bust, I'll mark the under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it, and mark my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I will be marking the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake you have, replace and add your sewing allowance, and I'll go ahead to mark. So at that point, I'll go ahead to connect from the waist to the bust and from the bust down to the chest line this way. And I'll just go ahead to outline my pattern. After doing that, we're going to go over to the lower part of this dress and you're going to come in by your sewing allowance. Next, you're going to blend in your pattern this way and you're going to be drawing out the basque. So the basque is a very deep and steep basque, so you want to make sure that you place your ruler straight to mark that out. Now at the shoulder, I'll be making use of the full shoulder measurement and I'll go ahead and mark about 2 inches here. So after I'm done marking that, I'm going to go ahead to connect it up this way. So this is what I have. This is the Queen Anne neckline yoke, and I'll mark 0.25 inches and I'll get rid of the bulginess to avoid the yoke from not lapping very well. So this is the pattern for the front, and the next step I'm going to take right now is to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button if you haven't. Give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question regarding this drafting tutorial, please leave it at the comment section. So after I'm done cutting out my pattern, this is what I have and this is what it is looking like. Now moving over to the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurements, and the neckline I used here is 3 by 2 inches. And just like we marked the chest line, the bust and other parts, the only difference is that we are not having a basque at the back part of the dress, and I'll go ahead to rule out my chest line because that is where my back yoke will start. Now I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5. 7 divided by 2, I have 3.5. Rule a straight line, and I will go ahead to mark ½ inch at both sides. Now I'm going to connect it back up this way, and I'll use my marker and I'll go ahead to outline it to make it more visible. So after drawing out my dart, the next step I'm going to take is just to go ahead to insert my body measurement. So note that all the measurement is starting after the zipper allowance, and for my zipper allowance I use 2 inches. Mark your bust circumference divided by 4, mark your sewing allowance. At the under bust, you're going to mark your under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it, and mark your sewing allowance. At the waist, mark the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake because you're going to be closing it up, replace it, and mark your sewing allowance. After you're done doing that, go ahead and connect from your waist down to the under bust and down to the bust line. So after connecting, this is what I have, and I'll just go ahead to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. Now we are almost done with our back pattern. The next step is to go ahead to alter the yoke part of this. So I'll be going down by 1 inch here, and I'll make a curve to connect down to my nipple to nipple, or where my dart is, just this way. After I'm done connecting, this is what I have. Now I'll be getting rid of the bulginess at the upper part of my yoke. That is marking 0.25, and this is my yoke. Now the next step is to get rid of the bulginess at the back of the dress. Mark ½ inch and go ahead to extend your ruler and connect. So this is what I have at this point, and I will be cutting it out. So I'll go ahead to cut out my back pattern. So if you have any question regarding this part of the video, please also leave your question at the comment section. So after I'm done cutting out my back pattern, this is what I have. Moving to the lower part of the dress, remember my shoulder to waistline stopped at 17 inches. So now I'll mark my skirt length and I'll go ahead to add 2 inches for folding or turn up allowance. So after making those marks, I'll go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to draw it out this way. So now I'll label here as skirt length and folding allowance of 2 inches. So at the upper part of my pattern will be serving at my waist. I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, mark the sewing allowance. So whenever I'm making a corset or bustier, I don't add that to my skirt, but if you do so, go ahead to do that. Now I'll place my tape and mark 7 inches for my hip line. For a much taller person, you can go ahead to use 8 inches. So I'll label here as my waist and here as my hip. So at the hip point, I'm going to place my tape, mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I will be adding my sewing allowance to it. So now after that, the next step you're going to take is to go ahead and place your French cuff or use your freehand sketch and connect. So whatever you have on your hip, let's say your hip is 40 divided by 4, you have 10 plus 2 inches sewing allowance. You're going to minus 2 inches or 1.5 depending on how fitted you want your skirt to be. So after that, you're going to go ahead to mark and you're going to connect. So now I'm going to use my marker to outline my skirt pattern to make it more visible for you to see. So after this, the next step is just to go ahead and I will cut out my skirt pattern. So after cutting out my skirt pattern, I'll be using this to cut my back pattern. The only difference is that I'll be adding a 2 inches zipper allowance for the back, and for the front I'm going to cut it on fold. So now we're going to bring our pattern for the front to create that basque effect. So look at where my waistline stopped. You're going to place it on the waistline of the pattern and you're going to go ahead to shape or draw it out this way. After drawing it out, you're just going to go ahead to outline it, and at that point you're going to cut it out. With that way, it's going to be giving you that deep basque effect at the waistline. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial, and at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and see you in our next video. Thanks.